And we are back, and we just finished watching 2024's Miller's Girl, rated R with a runtime of 1 hour and 33 minutes. This is currently streaming on Netflix and comes to us from writer-director Jade Halley Bartlett. This stars Jenna Ortega as Cairo Sweet, a name that I just couldn't understand.
They all gotta have stupid names.
Yeah. Well, he doesn't. Jonathan Miller, that's so run-of-the-mill.
I mean, yeah.
Run-of-the-mill.
All right. Whatever, man. I guess to balance out the weird stuff, they gotta have a plain, average, super boring name.
Yeah. So this is the story of 18-year-old Cairo Sweet, a senior, I'm assuming, who's getting ready to shake the dust of this crummy little Tennessee town and get out into the big world. She wants to go to Yale. And I guess she's taking this advanced creative writing class, and she meets Mr. Miller, Jonathan Miller, played by the lovely Martin Freeman, who is obviously way older than her and is, to boot, her teacher.
Yep.
From there, we come to find out that I don't think that Cairo originally had designs on Jonathan, did she? It seemed like Winnie's provocations led her to more.
Maybe. I feel like she kind of was interested in him, but she didn't think on it until Winnie was talking about getting with that teacher. Right.
Well, I think in the beginning when she's early to class and they sort of have that exchange, I think like most students, they want to be recognized by their teacher. They want praise. They want recognition. They want to be seen, which is something that's said in the story. So I think there's that aspect to it. And I don't think that she thought of him in that way until her friend Winnie kind of puts it in her head. What do you think?
I mean, I said what I thought. I kind of think that she was interested in him, and then Winnie, it might have been like a little plant in her mind that only bloomed when Winnie was talking about it.
Yeah. Winnie, played by Gideon Adlon, and he also has a friend named Boris Fillmore, who's another...
Miller has a friend
named Boris Fillmore, who's also a teacher there, but who seems to flirt but doesn't get caught, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Or
he knows
where the line is, like he says in the story. Okay. From here, things progress pretty rapidly. It's not a long film. It's only 1 hour and 33 minutes. So
it felt kind of long to me.
Did it? Was it because we were starting and stopping?
That might have been it.
Yeah. I don't know what to think about this film. I feel like it was trying to be more than it was. There was a lot of big words being thrown about. Lots of big words being thrown about. I think the idea of the story was sort of interesting, but then it's kind of the weird thing to me is that she then puts this plan into action at the end where I guess she wants to make him pay for his rejection.
Mm-hmm.
However, there is a sequence in the story that happens while they're both reading the short story that she's written. And I am wondering, because I think that the story is very ambiguous. And sometimes it's hard to trust a witness.
Yeah, they're not really reliable.
They're not reliable narrators, right? So towards the later in the film, they're both being questioned about a sequence of events, and they both have their own interpretations of what happened, right? She makes it seem a little bit more serious than it was, I guess, and he made it seem like he
downplayed it a lot.
He downplayed it a lot, right? But yet, when they're both reading the short story, there's something that happens. However, we don't know if that actually happened in real life. What do you think? Do you think that what happened while he was reading the story, I'm not talking about what he was doing in the shed with himself.
Yeah.
Just the story itself. Do you think that
I don't know.
Mr. Murphy
I'm
Alice...
not going to lie. I don't know. It could be or it could not be, and I don't know.
Although he does say to the wife later that he never slept with her.
Yeah, he does say that.
Do you think he's being truthful then?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, I didn't enjoy the film.
Because, tell me.
Not only was it just like gross overall, but I don't like you said, this film wanted to be more than it was, and there was a lot of big words thrown around. And I just can't get behind movies like that make me feel kind of stupid. So I didn't find
I don't think it's you though. I think this movie was very self-important, and I think that, not to take away, I think the idea behind it was interesting. I just think that it could have been dealt with better. I think, and I'm not justifying. Okay, so first of all, do they have an affair? We don't know. But
I think they do.
You sort of kind of feel bad for him because his wife seems just like a terrible person.
She doesn't seem like it. She is. She's
and
horrible.
She gets progressively worse as the story goes on. In the beginning, you don't really get a sense of her.
In the beginning, that kind of almost seemed happy.
Right. And then as the story progresses,
I think the first instance is when they're with Boris at that
restaurant, right? Where Winnie's the waitress.
Yeah. And she just like tears him apart right in front of their friend.
Fillmore. Yeah. Which I thought was and I think like both you and I looked at each other like, what just happened? Right.
Yeah. Because not only would that be like outrageous to talk about like in private, just like completely like humbling him, she did it in front of their friend in public,
right?
Like, not even
she didn't care. And then as the story progresses, I don't even think she gets out of her bedclothes. She's just wearing lingerie or whatever she's wearing.
Yeah, no,
night dresses.
She doesn't even like go outside.
Yeah,
she's just
and then she drinks more and more. And I mean, he calls her an alcoholic, right? Not that that's a reason to be mean or anything, but I guess it would explain it. But at the same time, do you think that is supposed to make the viewer feel bad for Jonathan? Here he has this harpy wife who just doesn't understand him, isn't compassionate, isn't empathetic to him, tries to debase him, tries to
put him down constantly.
Do you think that that's the intent there?
I mean, it might be. It might try to soften the blow of the fact that he was messing around with an 18-year-old girl as a fully grown adult
and using his power of authority to kind of, yeah. So, okay, so a couple of things.
He doesn't like force her into this relationship. She pursues him.
Yes.
But yeah, he's
the adult, and he should have said.
There's a lot of things wrong with the dynamic with the relationship.
Right. And they're both to blame. Neither one of them is innocent.
Not at all.
Not at all. She actively pursues him.
Yeah, she actively pursues him, and he lets her.
And he lets her.
And then he indulges her. And then he has the nerve to be like, I won't indulge this.
Right. Right.
It's kind of too late.
Yeah. I think the first thing was the whole poetry reading when he comes up next to her and whispers in her ear. And I was like, wait a minute. That's stuff that lovers do. What is he doing?
I think Olivia like got up and like.
Yes, we originally were watching this with Kid 1, but she couldn't handle it. Kid 2, sorry. Kid 1 powered through. Thank you, Jay. But Kid 2 just couldn't handle it.
Yeah.
What do you think of big age gaps? Relationships with big age gaps?
I don't think that they're good.
No. What if the person, for argument's sake, what if one person was 40 and one person was 60? At that point, does it matter?
I mean, they're both older, so I guess it's just kind of like...
It's not for you.
It's not for me, but if they're at that stage in life, it's just kind of like, you're old. I don't really care what you're doing anymore.
Yeah. What
at
about...
that point, they've both matured substantially. They both experienced life for long periods of time.
What about somebody that's 18 and somebody that's 48?
That's disgusting.
Why is it disgusting?
Because an 18-year-old has spent all their life being a child, and a 48-year-old has like the majority of their life they have spent as an adult, gaining experiences, going through other relationships. You can't be with someone like that as an 18-year-old. But
what if it's love at first sight?
Love at first sight doesn't exist.
How do you know? You don't know.
I know because love at first sight doesn't exist.
Don't be jaded, Jay.
I'm just telling the truth. There's attraction, but there's no such thing as love at first sight.
I'm glad you said that. What do you think? Do you think that... So let's back up a little bit. Cairo is obviously twisted, right?
Oh my God, she was so goddamn weird.
First, where are the parents? Like, that
She's
can't be a thing that you just leave your your child behind. That just doesn't sound right.
That's what they did. But she's like, they pretend I'm dead, traveling abroad. Like,
but the other thing was, she said that they were high-priced lawyers.
Yeah.
They obviously had money. That house was unreal. I loved it. I wish I could live in that house. Yes, jealous for sure. They couldn't pay like somebody to stay with her, a housekeeper, a nanny, somebody.
They were pretending she was dead.
That's so crazy. So this girl is basically raising herself. She's book smart, but she's not life smart.
Yeah, no.
And she's very emotional.
Oh my God. Incredibly ruled by her emotions.
Incredibly ruled by her emotions, because I think that as an 18-year-old, I mean, some people mature and some people kind of have to ease into it. I don't think that she's had the proper guidance or anything, or parental involvement of any kind.
Parental involvement for sure. She's just like alone. And it's not even like she has like some sense of community, because when she meets Miller, he's like, you live over there. I thought there was only ghosts there, and you don't see a single other person near her. So she's isolated completely. Which
she doesn't have siblings.
For, like, her social. No, she's completely alone.
Right.
And it can't be good for like her upbringing or
mental health or anything. Yeah. Right. So this child, this old child, is without any kind of proper guidance or just anything. Parental involvement, nothing. She's basically raising herself. She reads a lot, which is commendable to her, but you can't really learn everything you need to in life just through books.
Yeah.
So she's operating at a deficit. It seemed like in the beginning she was sort of like the follower. It seemed like Winnie was more of a dominant person.
Yeah. She was definitely more like out there, and Cairo was kind of like
shy, almost withdrawn to herself. But by the end of the story, it flips.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
It's like they switched roles, because Winnie is like completely, she like, in the last scene, she looks like weak.
Yes. The hierarchy has shifted, and now
Cairo's on top.
Kyra's the alpha.
All right.
What?
Just keep talking.
That is a word to describe somebody who's dominant.
But you didn't need to use that face.
What face?
She's the alpha.
What are you talking about? So there's that part of it. And then on the other side of the coin, you have Jonathan's story. Here's a man who, when he was much younger, had ideas of being a writer, had published a book of, I guess, short stories.
Short love stories,
dedicated it to his wife, and then kind of fell into anonymity. He wasn't a writer, even though he claimed to be one.
Right.
And
which
then
is something his wife attacks him about.
Right. And then he becomes a teacher, and he's teaching. Well, I think originally in the beginning they were saying something about a theater. So like he was like a theater teacher or something, and now he's an English teacher.
I don't remember the thing about the theater, to be honest.
Well, he's talking to Boris in the beginning. I can't remember. But so then he's now this, and then Cairo comes into the room an hour early, and they start to talking.
Weirdo. Who the hell does that, honestly?
Yeah. And then Winnie comes in and takes her, and I guess they go to get food, and then Miller starts going through her things.
Which was weird.
Which was very weird. What else? So then after that...
We don't really need to give like a synopsis of the film.
We don't. You're right. So you did not like this because of the age gap. Any other reasons?
Yeah, okay. I wanted to like get into that before we ended. There was one reason, which was obviously the age gap, which was part of the bigger issue of just John and Cairo being together. That was wrong on different levels. Not only because of their significant age gap, their significant maturity gap. Cairo is not only has no experience being an adult, she barely has any experience being like a person. She's by herself. Her only experiences with books. No siblings, parents, like we said. She's alone. Mm-hmm. Only children like who are surrounded by other people are like already, I've known only children and they're different. So she had nobody. So obviously she's like level 0 maturity. And Jonathan is like, got his wife, he's got his friend, I'm sure he's got family, he's surrounded by people. He's lived for way longer, probably twice her lifetime.
Right, at least.
Yeah, he was old. He got like the wrinkles. His hair was not like dark, it's light as hell.
Right, he was completely gray.
So there's their maturity gap, and then there's also the dynamic of their relationship. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter if you're legal, quote unquote legal, because 18 is still just ridiculous to be getting into a relationship with anybody that old. They were a student and a teacher. That itself,
he should have pumped the brakes there.
Yeah, he should have been like Boris and known where the line was and not crossed it. He had, oh God, ridiculous. You can't do that. You can't get into a relationship where one party has power over the other. That's completely unfair. Mm-hmm. And you see it like when they're having their little spat, like they split. He's talking like, oh, I'm going to fail you. Like, he has the power to destroy her GPA, destroy her chances at the future she's chasing. Like, you can't be with someone like that. That's completely risky. Mm. So there's that dynamic of their relationship, the maturity gap, age gap. So I didn't like those things about the story. When we began watching it, there was also the fact that I thought this was going to be completely different. I was expecting something. I'm not going to say that I was disappointed, because what I was expecting was like a little worse, but I was a little kind of like, I was expecting something more shocking, and I got something more like, oh, well, that's just kind of whatever.
Yeah.
When we began, I thought, like, before we sat down, I thought that it was just going to be some gross, like, old teacher dude preying on a young girl. Mm. When we sat down, though, you said something, I don't remember what it was anymore, but it made me think about it. And I was like, wait, does that mean that she's going to be like forcing this relationship upon him? And I thought that would be interesting, because it would be a role reversal, and not only the fact that it would be a woman forcing a man into something, it would be the student forcing the teacher. Mm-hmm. So I thought that's the direction it was going to go in. It didn't. It was like a mutual sort of thing with her pursuing him and then him accepting. So I expected something from the movie, and it didn't live up to my expectations. So I was kind of just like, that's kind of lame.
Okay, fair enough. What did you think of the performances? Did you think Jenna Ortega did a good job as Cairo?
I mean, I found her insufferable, so I guess I have to admit that she did good.
Did a good job. What about Jonathan?
I guess.
Did you feel bad for him? Did you like him? Did you hate him? Did you think that how it was going to end, it ended, or?
I thought that he was pathetic.
You thought he was? Why did you think he was pathetic?
He's in a relationship with some woman who he hates and who hates him. He's constantly feeling bad about himself, and he stifles himself, and he's mediocre, and he starts fooling around with the student. And nothing could make me feel bad for such a person. Like, it's just like you're squandering your life at that point. Mm. He wasn't doing anything. And while his wife was like a huge piece of crap, she was right. Like, I married a writer. You did. And then he just gave up. He was mediocre. He did become mediocre. Mm.
Do you think he became mediocre out of fear, or because maybe he just didn't have the ability to? I mean, some people write. Some writers write. I think somebody like Stephen King, he says like he writes every day, right? So as a writer, you have to practice your craft, right, to excel at it. So do you think he gave up because he just couldn't hack it, or maybe his best days were behind him? Maybe there was nothing else left in him.
Yeah, that might have been it. He had peaked.
But then this whole experience, right, sort of shakes him up, and he starts writing again.
Yeah, but that
so she becomes his muse in a way.
That's true. She does say that whole thing was her greatest achievement as well.
And there's also, I guess we can spoil this because it's already on Netflix. I don't think it did well at the box office.
I mean, how about we like cut it off here and then go into? I mean, we've already kind of been talking about it.
Yeah. Should we give our numbers and then speak to spoilers?
Yeah, let's try that.
All right. So on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you give this film?
Probably a 3.
A 3, really?
Yeah, it didn't meet up to my expectations. It was just kind of icky. I didn't have a favorite character, favorite scene, nothing. There was nothing really enjoyable about this film.
Okay. I would give it a 5. I think from where it starts to where it ends, I agree with you, mediocre at best. I think the idea was sort of interesting. It is an icky topic for sure, but I think the idea was interesting, and I think that I have my own idea of what I think is happening here, and we'll see if I'm right. So we are going to speak to spoilers. If you don't want to know what happens at the end, please turn this off now. I'm going to talk about the ending of this film. So Jonathan gives Cairo a midterm assignment, and basically it is to write a short story in the same way as an author.
Yeah, a favorite author of your choosing.
Of her choosing, right. So she picks Henry Miller, who wrote a lot of risque things. And her short story is about an English professor named Murphy, Mr. Murphy, and his student named Alice, and how he comes to her house and they basically have sex.
Yeah, there's a sexual encounter.
So prior to this, there was an incident where somehow Jonathan Miller, Mr. Miller,
yes,
the teacher, walks off with Cairo's phone. He has it at his house. He's sitting there waiting for his wife to be done with whatever it is that she's doing so that they could go away for the weekend. And then this phone in his satchel starts ringing, and it's Cairo. She apparently says, "You walked off with my phone."
She's calling from her landline at her house.
So she asks him to bring it over. And he says, "Well, when I go with my wife, we'll stop by and whatever." So she doesn't seem too pleased about it, but whatever. She just is basically like, "Just bring me my phone. I need it." He does wind up going
by himself
in the rain
for some reason.
And he gets to her house, and she comes out in slow motion.
She's in this white flowy
dress, satiny, looks almost like a camisole, kind of
swishing
like a nightgown thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Very pretty. Her hair's done really nicely. She looks fantastic.
She's
all dolled up for Mr. Miller. She comes out, and I guess she's trying to be seductive, and she says, "Come here." And he says, like, no, you come here.
Yeah.
So she gets in his face. There's a lot of this tension.
And they try to like make it look all artsy with like they zoom in on her face with like the freckles or like the leaves or whatever. And her chest.
There's like close-ups of eyes and stuff like that. Yeah,
the eyes definitely. Yeah. Their chests are pressed together, and then they just sort of like
two magnets come together. So I'm assuming that happened. I'm assuming that happened, and then from that comes the short story. So there's this ambiguity to this film. Do Cairo and Jonathan sleep together? I don't know.
I don't know either, because it could be or
it could not
be.
Right. Yeah, and depending on who you're talking to, it's very ambiguous. According to Jonathan, nothing happened. He never touched her.
But
according to her,
if he lied about not touching her, who's to say he's not lying about not sleeping with her?
That's true. And there's the thing, right? Because it's like, who do you believe? Do you believe Cairo or do you believe Jonathan? So I think that the truth is somewhere in the middle, right?
Yeah.
I believe that when he went to drop off the phone, he did kiss her. The next thing we come to see in the story is the short story. And the short story is a professor having an affair with his student. While Jonathan in real time is reading the story, you see, and the mechanism here in the film is both of them read passages of the short story.
Yeah, at the same time, their voices kind of like overlap
sometimes, right? And it's supposed to be, I guess, sexually charged and very
Intimate, maybe?
Intimate, kind of.
It's just their voices speaking and
right.
them doing these things.
Right. And they basically talk about having sex, right? It seemed like it was this inevitable thing that was going to happen.
Yeah.
So me as a viewer, I'm left to wonder if this thing between them actually happened, right? Was it all just sexual tension, or did they actually sleep together? You never know.
Yeah, it could have happened because she might have based the short story off the encounter, or it could have just been him imagining that encounter as those two.
Right. I think there definitely was on both sides the desire to be together.
They definitely wanted each other.
Definitely. But whether it happened or not is the bigger question. And I think as an adult, Jonathan would realize that crossing that line would lead to disaster.
Yeah.
Disaster in his personal life and definitely his professional life.
Which it did result in.
Right. And then from there, she's waiting for him, I guess, to hear his feedback about the story. He is not happy about the story. And basically tells her, like you'd mentioned earlier, to rewrite it.
Or
which
he would
she
fail
is just
her.
like about no.
Yeah, she's very, very, very adamant about that being
right. And she wants to know why, and he doesn't want to explain it. But basically, I think it's
he
because
keeps saying like, "Oh, you know why?" And she's like, "Tell me."
Right, and I think that he definitely has feelings for her. However, I don't think he slept with her. I think that story is a fabrication in her head. I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. So then she is mad. She's mad at his rejection. So then she puts this plan into motion and she involves her friend Winnie. And I think at that point, because I think I turned to you and I was like, does she have a thing for Winnie?
Does Winnie have a thing for Cairo?
Does Cairo have a thing for Winnie? But I don't think she did. I think she just
Winnie
used...
have a thing for Cairo?
Well, I think Winnie did like Cairo, right?
I think so too.
I think so too.
You just kept saying, does Cairo have a thing for Winnie?
Well, no, because I think
she did.
Cairo eggs Winnie to contact Fillmore, right? And like, oh, we're gonna make out, right? And this is for him. And she was like, no, it's a little for me too, kind of thing. I think there was a line or something.
She whispers or she says it like sort of quietly.
Yeah. And I think that in that moment, it felt like Winnie maybe had a little thing for
because that's where it seemed like the dynamic switched.
Right.
After that moment, Cairo was more.
She was just laser focused and basically had concocted this whole plan to her benefit. So then you come to find out that Cairo leaves a copy of the story with the vice principal, who then brings them both in
for questioning
separately. And you see the he said, she said go back and forth of like what happened in your own words and just other kinds of questions that the answers differ wildly depending on who you're talking to.
Yeah.
However,
I don't know why I keep calling her Winnie. Cairo's account seems more true to what we saw, and Miller's just like insanely like, oh, that didn't really happen. It was more like this. Blah blah blah.
Yes, there was something about his testimony. Yes, that wasn't. It didn't feel authentic.
No,
whereas she was very matter of fact and to the point.
Yeah.
It seemed like she was the more reliable witness there.
She was like firm in her belief of what happened. And he was like,
he was sort of
laughing, like trying to crack a joke. Yeah. Like, oh.
And then towards the end when he says, it seems like it doesn't matter what I say. And I think that at that moment he understood that this was the end of his career at the school.
Yeah.
And then he gets into a fight with his wife. He gets into a fight with his probably only friend.
Yeah.
And then Cairo also gets into a fight with Winnie in a way.
Yes, sort of.
And it's interesting because the people that cared for them are now the enemy. And their relationship at that point doesn't seem like it can continue because she has now set into motion these things that have
she was
basically
like the
destroyed his
his career's demise.
His not only his professional career but also his familial house
and
relations.
His family and friendships.
Yeah, so she was like a bomb basically that just went off. So then afterwards you find out that Miller loses his job, and then I guess he starts to write. I guess he uses his experience to write again. And at the very end, this is the part that I wanted to talk about. So at the very end, it looks like Cairo's at Yale and she's going to school.
Yeah, because it didn't seem like the setting around the high school.
Right. And then who's waiting for her? Miller. So in my mind, and then she starts sort of crying.
Yeah, her eyes like get really watery. He like mouths high at her, and it looks like her lip twitches, but she doesn't say anything.
Right. So in that moment, I think that for some reason, when I was watching that, I was like, they did sleep together.
Really?
Because why would he go to Yale to see her?
I don't know. It could be plausible.
Unless something had happened and he couldn't just exorcise her from his being. Because even though she ruined his life, she woke something up in him and he started writing again. She became the muse.
Yeah. I mean, when he said it's like he's seeing everything in grayscale and you're the first thing he's seen in color.
Yes, that's a great line. There's a lot of really interesting lines in this. I think some of the writing was really interesting, but not enough to carry the story. I think that if it was me, I would have taken out the wife completely. I don't think she was necessary.
No. I mean, I can see your point of it being sort of like, oh, pity Miller, but
yeah,
he's messing around with the student. You shouldn't pity him.
Yeah. And I think that, get rid of the wife, flesh out the relationship between Miller and Fillmore, maybe a little bit more, maybe a couple more scenes with Winnie, and then make the ending not ambiguous. Let me see Yale. Let me see Miller getting out of his, I don't know, a train, a plane, going to this place to see her, because I think that that's important, right? And I think that, again, this is my interpretation. Is this what happened? Who knows? Is this something that she's daydreaming? Who knows? It just felt like there was so much ambiguity that it could have just been anything. Maybe it did happen. Maybe it didn't. Again, there's a lot of vagueness here. And I think I would have liked, as a viewer, to really understand what was going on, to just let me know. Like, this is now happening.
I don't like that's one of the things that kind of like soured the viewing experience. It's like they're talking all crazy type things that high school students are not saying. Like, no one's saying that stuff.
Yeah.
But also just like you said, the ambiguity. I don't like such thing. Like, I like when things are direct, when you tell me what's happening.
See, I don't
happened.
I don't necessarily dislike ambiguity, but I think here it's really important to be clear. And I think that here it would have made the watch experience better. And I think it would have helped the story more had we as the viewer been able to see the truth, right?
Yeah.
Don't give me the he said, she said, show me kind of thing.
That would have been better.
That would have been better. So you gave it a 3, Skip?
Skip completely.
I gave it a 5. Not the best thing I ever saw. Not the worst thing I ever saw. I would like to see somebody else revisit this property kind of and make it better. And I'm grateful that people got jobs from this project.
Yeah.
And it's nice to see Jenna Ortega, as always.
Yeah,
she's fun. It's definitely it's a 360 than what we're usually used to seeing her in, usually horror films. So this was kind of very scandalous, very different. I agreed with you while we were watching. I also found it off-putting she would slip in and out of the accent. These are people from Tennessee, so obviously they're Southern. They have a certain way of speaking.
Sometimes it was like she was like normal Jenna Ortega voice, and then like you'd hear it at like the end of a word, and it'd be like, oh yeah, they're in Tennessee.
Yeah.
Miller, I don't think Miller did a good job of having an accent.
I don't think he did a good job of that
Winnie
either.
was like the best.
Yeah. And Fillmore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those two are probably
Those
the
two.
most accurate.
I hated the wife. I think after that scene where she ridicules him at the restaurant, I just half paid attention to her. Although I was completely scandalized with her scenes because I was like, why is she being such a witch to him?
I don't even know why
and I
they
didn't
got
say
married.
witch. I said the other word.
Yeah. I don't know why they got married.
Yeah. Blame it on the tequila. All right. 3 and 5. I guess if you feel like watching something naughty, I guess you can watch Miller's Girl. Otherwise, keep it moving. And that's it from us. And we will bid you all a
Good night.
good night.